Here's something nobody tells you about avoidant rebounds. The faster it looks from the outside, the slower it actually feels on the inside. What looks like moving on in record time is usually someone running from a feeling at the exact speed that feeling is chasing them. They told you the rebound means you have already been replaced. That moving on so fast had to mean nothing real existed between you in the first place. After hearing that enough times, most people believe it. They stop asking what is actually happening inside that new relationship. They convince themselves it must be effortless, easy, the thing you never managed to give them. But what if that story is wrong? Because I am a healed avoidant, and I am going to walk you through the 5 stages an avoidant rebound relationship actually moves through, stage by stage, from the inside. And I promise you, it does not look anything like what it looks like from the outside. To understand these stages, you first have to understand what a rebound actually is for an avoidant nervous system. Because without this, every stage that follows will be misread. A rebound is rarely chosen for the person it lands on. Research on adult attachment consistently shows it is chosen for what that person represents in that exact moment, which is distance from the discomfort the last relationship left behind. The avoidant is not selecting someone better or easier or more compatible. They are selecting relief, and relief is not the same as connection, even when it gets mistaken for it in the early weeks. That distinction is the entire reason the 5 stages exist and why they tend to move in the same order almost every time, regardless of who the new partner is or how different they seem on paper from the person who came before them. It is also why the rebound so rarely has anything to do with the actual qualities of the person chosen, since the choosing happened under conditions where almost anyone offering relief would have qualified. Stage 1 is relief disguised as ease. This is a stage everyone on the outside sees and assumes means something significant. It feels effortless because there is nothing yet for the nervous system to defend against. No history, no accumulated pressure, no moments where old patterns have had the chance to resurface. The avoidant experiences this lightness and mistakes it for compatibility, when really it is just the absence of the specific weight that built up in the last relationship. This stage can move fast, faster than anything that came before it, because speed itself feels like proof that something different is happening. It is not proof of anything yet. It is simply distance from where they just were. What makes this stage so convincing, even to the avoidant themselves, is that the relief is genuinely felt. It is not performed for an audience or faked to seem fine. The nervous system really has dropped the weight it was carrying, and that drop produces something that feels almost identical to falling for someone. There is a specific kind of momentum in this stage, too, a pull toward moving things forward quickly, toward labels and plans and certainty, because certainty here feels like an antidote to everything uncertain about the relationship they just left. The difference only becomes visible later, once enough time has passed with a relationship to start asking for something the early ease never required. Stage 2 is the quiet return of the old triggers. This stage arrives the moment real closeness starts to form, usually once the new relationship has enough history to start asking something of them. The specific situations look different from the last relationship, but the internal response is identical. A request for more presence creates the same flicker of pressure. A moment of vulnerability creates the same instinct to pull back and assess. The avoidant often does not recognize this stage for what it is while it is happening, because the surface details are new enough to disguise the underlying pattern. They tell themselves this person is different, while the nervous system underneath is already running the exact same calculations it ran before. The new partner's specific words, habits, and reactions feel unfamiliar enough that the avoidant assumes the response to them must be unfamiliar too. It rarely is. The trigger has simply put on different clothes, and underneath those clothes the same old alarm is sounding at the same old volume. What tends to give the stage away, for anyone paying close attention, is a small shift in language. The same phrases that describe the last relationship as suffocating begin appearing again, attached now to someone entirely new. Stage 3 is a comparison that nobody says out loud. This is where the rebound starts to feel less like relief and more like work, and the avoidant begins, often without meaning to, measuring the new relationship against the one they left, not necessarily in favor of the previous partner. Sometimes a comparison reveals real things a rebound lacks. Sometimes it reveals things a rebound has that the previous relationship never did. Either way, This stage introduces something the early E's never had to account for, which is a question of whether this relationship can hold the same weight the last one eventually held. That question rarely gets asked directly. It shows up instead as a subtle restlessness, a low-grade dissatisfaction the avoidant cannot always name. They might find themselves more critical of small things, irritated by habits that would not have registered a few months earlier, searching for a flaw to justify a discomfort that actually has nothing to do with the person in front of them. This is the stage where the relationship is quietly being held up against a standard it was never told it had to meet, a standard built entirely out of comparison, rather than anything the current partner actually did. Stage 4 is the test the rebound never agreed to take. This is a stage where the avoidant, usually unconsciously, starts looking for evidence about how this new relationship will end. They might create small distance to see how the other person responds. They might withhold something to see if it gets noticed. They might bring up the past in ways that seem unrelated, but are actually checking for reaction. None of this is calculated cruelty. It is the nervous system trying to get ahead of an ending it assumes is coming, because every previous closeness eventually produced one. The tragedy of this stage is that the testing itself often creates the exact outcome it was trying to predict, since most people, sensing they're being tested without understanding why, start pulling back in response. The avoidant then reads that pulling back is confirmation, proof that the relationship really was always going to end the way every relationship before it ended, never recognizing that the test manufactured the very evidence it was searching for. This is a stage where the rebound most resembles a relationship it was supposedly an escape from, because the same architecture has simply rebuilt itself inside new walls. Stage 5 is the fork, and this is where the 5 stages stop following a single script and split into 2 very different outcomes. In one direction, the rebound ends, usually around the same point the original pattern always produced an ending, and the avoidant walks away having repeated the cycle without examining it, already half convinced the next relief will be different. They carry the same unexamined story into the next relationship, the same hope that this time the ease will simply last, without ever asking why it never has before. In the other direction, something rarer happens. The avoidant catches themselves mid-pattern, notices a testing, notices a comparison, notices the old triggers wearing a new disguise, and instead of letting the cycle complete itself, they stay inside the discomfort long enough to ask why this keeps happening regardless of who they are with. That question, asked honestly, is the only thing that has ever interrupted the cycle. It does not happen automatically just because enough time passes. It happens because something inside finally gets uncomfortable enough to stop outsourcing the answer to a new person and starts looking instead at the pattern itself, separate from whoever happens to be standing inside it this time. The fork rarely announces itself in advance. Most avoidants do not know which direction they are headed until they are already standing inside stage 4, watching themselves either repeat the old move or, for the first time, refuse to make it. If you are watching someone move through a rebound right now, here is what matters most. The early ease does not tell you anything about where this is going. Stage 1 looks identical, whether someone is about to repeat the exact same pattern or about to interrupt it for the first time. The only thing that actually differentiates those 2 outcomes is what happens by stage 4 when the testing starts and the old triggers resurface. Does the person retreat into the same automatic responses without noticing them? Or do they catch the pattern in real time and choose something different? That is the only meaningful signal available, and it does not arrive until well after the relationship already looks serious from the outside. Watching for it earlier than that will not tell you anything reliable, no matter how closely you pay attention, because the signal genuinely does not exist yet in stage 1 or 2. It only becomes visible once the relationship has enough weight in it to actually trigger the old defenses, which means patience, however uncomfortable, is the only honest position available to anyone trying to read this from the outside. And if you have been on the outside of one of these rebounds, wondering what it says about you that they seem to move on so easily, I want you to know something. The ease was never about you. It was a temporary absence of pressure, not the presence of something better. Whether that rebound becomes a repeated pattern or an actual turning point depends entirely on what the avoidant does once the pressure inevitably returns, which it always does. In every relationship, eventually, none of this excuses what the speed of it might have cost you to witness, but it does explain why it happened, and why ease in the beginning was never the reliable signal it appeared to be. The relationship you watch unfold with so much apparent ease was running on the exact same architecture as the one you were in. It just had not been tested yet, and tested is the only condition under which any of this ever becomes visible. If there is one thing worth taking from this, it is that the speed of someone's exit was never a measurement of what you meant. It was a measurement of how much pressure had built up by the time they finally left, and how badly the nervous system needed somewhere else to put it. Now I want to hear from you. Have you watched someone move through these exact stages with someone new? Or are you the avoidant recognizing this pattern in your own rebound right now? Drop it in the comments. What you share might be exactly what someone else needed to read today. And if this gave you something real, subscribe. Because next week we are going into how to tell, from the outside, whether someone is genuinely healing or just cycling through the same pattern with a new face attached to it. That is a video you will not want to miss.